A widowed man hires a woman to play the role of his girlfriend for one night, but when the truth is revealed, he realizes she's not the woman he hired, but a billionaire tech empire tycoon who entered his life by mistake and stayed because, with him, she could finally breathe. Between corporate pressure, betrayal from an old enemy, and irreversible choices, they must decide. Hide behind a mask of power or risk everything for a true love that could change three lives: the man, the woman, and the daughter who dares to hope again. Follow the story to the end, hit like, and comment the city you're watching in so I know how far this story has come. Part 1. The email sat in Nolan Reed's inbox for 3 days before he finally opened it. He knew what it was. Everyone in the office knew what it was. The annual gala. The one night each year when Crawford Industries pretended its employees were human beings instead of line items on a quarterly report, dressed them up in rented formal wear, and paraded them in front of investors and board members like show horses at auction. Nolan had avoided it for 6 years straight. 6 years of carefully worded excuses, sudden illnesses, family emergencies that were technically true because Lily always came first. His daughter was his emergency, his reason, his entire justification for existing at all. But this year was different. This year, his division had landed the Meridian contract, 18 months of work, countless late nights, an entire team pushed to the edge of burnout, and now the company wanted to celebrate, wanted to show him off, wanted him there, visible, accountable, present in a way that made his stomach turn just thinking about it. He stared at the screen, the cursor blinking inside the RSVP field. Attending alone wasn't an option. Crawford had made that clear in his follow-up message, the one marked high priority with the little red flag that meant this isn't a suggestion. The optics mattered. The image mattered, families mattered, partnerships mattered. A man alone at a company gala looked unstable, unattached, somehow less valuable in a world where value was measured in appearances as much as profit margins. Nolan closed the laptop. He picked up his coffee, realized it had gone cold, and set it back down. Outside his office window, the city stretched out in gray concrete and glass towers, all sharp edges and no warmth. It was April, but spring hadn't arrived yet. The trees were still bare. The sky was still the color of old dishwater. He rubbed his eyes and checked his watch. 4:30. Lily's school let out at 3:15, which meant Maria, the neighbor who watched her after school, would be walking her home right about now. He'd have maybe 20 minutes before he needed to leave, pick her up, figure out dinner, help with homework, run through the bedtime routine that had kept them both sane since Claire died. Claire. He didn't let himself think about her often. Thinking led to remembering, and remembering led to the kind of pain that made functioning impossible. But sometimes, late at night or in quiet moments like this, her face would surface anyway, laughing at something he'd said, reading to Lily before bed, standing in the kitchen with flour on her hands, and that crooked smile she only gave him when no one else was looking. She'd been gone for 4 years, Lily had been 3. And Nolan had spent every day since trying to build a life stable enough that his daughter wouldn't feel the absence as sharply as he did. He opened the laptop again. The RSVP form was still there, still waiting, still demanding an answer he didn't want to give. Attending? Yes or no. Guest name. Blank. He typed his name, Nolan Reed. Then he stared at the guest field for a long time. Finally, against every instinct that told him this was a terrible idea, he opened a new browser tab and typed 4 words into the search bar. Hire girlfriend for event. The website looked disturbingly professional. Elegant companions. Discreet, sophisticated, tailored experiences for the modern professional. All arrangements handled with the utmost confidentiality. Nolan felt dirty just reading it, but he kept scrolling. The profiles were polished, almost clinical. Photos that looked like they'd been taken by actual photographers. Bios that emphasized education, interests, conversational skills. It wasn't what he'd expected, not that he'd known what to expect. He'd never done anything like this before, never even considered it. He clicked on one profile at random. Vanessa, 29, graduate degree in art history, enjoys theater, travel, and meaningful conversation. He closed the tab, opened it again. This was insane, completely insane. He was a widowed father who worked 60-hour weeks and spent his weekends at playgrounds and grocery stores. He didn't hire women to pretend to care about him. He didn't lie to his company or fake relationships or play games with his life just to make an event more convenient. Except he was considering it, because the alternative was showing up alone and facing the questions, the pity, the carefully disguised concern from colleagues who thought he needed saving. Or worse, he could skip it entirely and watch his career flatten out while other people got promoted around him. People who had wives and stable homes and lives that looked like the kind of lives corporations rewarded. He clicked the contact button. A form appeared. Simple, straightforward, event type, date, duration, any specific preferences or requirements. He filled it out quickly before he could talk himself out of it. Corporate gala, May 10th, 6 hours, including transit time. Someone professional, low-key, no drama. I just need a date who can hold a conversation and not make this more complicated than it already is. He added his phone number, his email, and hit submit before he could think about it any longer. Then he closed the laptop, grabbed his coat, and left to pick up Lily. The call came 2 days later. Nolan was in a meeting when his phone buzzed. He ignored it. Then it buzzed again and again. He excused himself, stepped into the hallway, and checked the screen. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. "Nolan Reed?" he said, his voice clipped, professional. "Mr. Reed, this is Elegant Companions returning your inquiry." The woman's voice was smooth, practiced, completely devoid of judgment. Nolan's shoulders tensed anyway. "Right. Yes, I thank you for calling. We've reviewed your request and have a few options that might suit your needs. Would you prefer to discuss this over the phone or schedule an in-person consultation?" "Phone is fine." "Excellent. Let me pull up your file." There was a pause, the faint sound of typing. "You're looking for someone to accompany you to a corporate event on May 10th. Professional, conversational, minimal complications. Is that accurate?" "Yes. And you specified no preferences regarding appearance or background?" "I just need someone who won't stand out. Someone who can blend in, talk to people, and make it through the night without anyone questioning why she's there." "Understood. I have 3 candidates who fit that description. I can send you their profiles, or if you'd like, I can make a recommendation based on your specific situation." Nolan hesitated. "Recommendation? Then I'd suggest Serafina Vale. She's one of our most experienced companions. Well-educated, excellent conversationalist, very comfortable in high-pressure social environments. She's worked with several clients in corporate settings and consistently receives outstanding feedback." "Fine. That works. Perfect. I'll send over the paperwork and coordinate directly with her. You'll receive a confirmation email within the hour, along with her contact information in case you need to discuss any details before the event. Is there anything else I can help with?" "No, that's... Thank you." "Our pleasure, Mr. Reed. We'll make sure everything goes smoothly." The line went dead. Nolan stood in the hallway for a moment, phone still pressed to his ear, feeling like he'd just made a deal with something he didn't fully understand. Then he went back to the meeting and tried to focus on quarterly projections instead of the fact that he'd just hired a woman to pretend to care about him for 6 hours. May 10th arrived faster than he wanted it to. Lily was with Maria for the night. Nolan had explained it as a work event, which wasn't technically a lie. Lily had asked if she could come, and he'd said no, and she'd pouted for exactly 12 seconds before getting distracted by the new coloring book Maria had brought. He loved his daughter more than anything in the world, but he was grateful she didn't press him on it. Grateful she didn't ask why he looked nervous. Grateful she was 7 and still believed her father had everything under control. He didn't. He stood in front of his bathroom mirror, adjusting his tie for the 4th time, and wondered what the hell he was doing. The suit was fine. Plain black, nothing flashy, the same one he wore to client meetings. His hair was too long but not unprofessional. His face looked tired, but that was permanent at this point. He'd stopped trying to fix it. His phone buzzed. "I'm outside." Black sedan. No rush. The text was from a number he didn't recognize, but he knew who it was. He grabbed his coat, checked his wallet, made sure his keys were in his pocket, and headed downstairs. The car was parked at the curb. Sleek, expensive, the kind of vehicle that didn't belong in his neighborhood. The back door opened as he approached, and a woman stepped out. Nolan stopped. She wasn't what he expected. She was tall, taller than most women he knew, even in heels. and dressed in something dark and elegant that looked like it cost more than his rent. Her hair was pulled back, sleek and deliberate, and her face was the kind of face that didn't need makeup but wore it anyway, subtle and precise. She looked like she belonged at a gala, like she'd been born into rooms full of powerful people and had never once questioned her right to be there. She smiled. Nolan Reed? Her voice was smooth, confident, with just a hint of something he couldn't place. Amusement, maybe. Or curiosity. That's me. She extended her hand. Serafina Vale, it's a pleasure to meet you. Her handshake was firm, professional, exactly what he would have expected, but her eyes, dark, sharp, too perceptive for a simple transaction, held his for a beat longer than necessary. Thank you for doing this, he said, feeling awkward and exposed in a way he hadn't anticipated. Of course. Shall we? She gestured toward the car, and he climbed in after her. The interior was immaculate. Leather seats, soft lighting, the faint scent of something expensive and unidentifiable. The driver didn't acknowledge them. The partition was up. Serafina settled into the seat across from him, crossed her legs, and folded her hands in her lap. So, she said, her tone light, conversational. Tell me about tonight. What should I know? Nolan exhaled slowly. It's a company gala. Crawford Industries, investors, board members, senior leadership. I just need to make it through the night without looking like I don't belong there. And you think having a date will help with that? I think showing up alone makes people ask questions I don't want to answer. She nodded, her expression unreadable. Fair enough. What's your role at Crawford? Lead engineer for the infrastructure division. We just landed a major contract, so they're trotting me out like a prize pony. Congratulations. Thanks. Do you enjoy it? The work? He hesitated. It's stable. It pays well. It lets me take care of my daughter. That's not what I asked. Her voice was gentle, but the question landed harder than he expected. No, he admitted. I don't enjoy it, but that doesn't matter. Why not? Because enjoyment isn't the point. Stability is. She tilted her head slightly, studying him. You're a widower. It wasn't a question. Nolan's jaw tightened. How did you... You're wearing a wedding ring. He glanced down. She was right. He hadn't taken it off, hadn't even thought about it. I should have mentioned that in the request, he said quietly. It's fine. I'm not here to judge. I'm here to make tonight easier for you. Then let's get our story straight. How did we meet? Serafina smiled, and for the first time he saw something genuine in it. How about this? We met at a bookstore. You were looking for something for your daughter, and I was browsing the same section. We started talking, realized we had more in common than we expected, and decided to see where it went. Simple, believable, hard to fact-check. That works? Good. Anything else I should know? Any colleagues I need to watch out for? My boss, Richard Crawford. He's intense, asks a lot of questions. Don't let him corner you. Noted. Anyone else? Just stay close. I'm not good at this kind of thing. This kind of thing? Performing. She studied him for a long moment, and he had the unsettling feeling that she could see straight through him, through the suit, the composure, the carefully constructed walls he'd spent years building. Then we'll perform together, she said softly, and no one will know the difference. The gala was exactly as suffocating as he'd imagined. The venue was a restored historic ballroom downtown, all marble floors and crystal chandeliers and floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. The guest list was a who's who of corporate power, men in expensive suits, women in designer gowns, everyone holding champagne glasses and smiling too much. Nolan hated it immediately. Serafina, on the other hand, moved through the room like she owned it. She kept her hand on his arm, light but present, and guided him through conversations with a skill that bordered on supernatural. She knew when to speak, when to listen, when to laugh at jokes that weren't funny, when to ask questions that made people feel important. She turned him from an invisible engineer into someone worth noticing, and she did it so seamlessly that Nolan forgot, more than once, that this wasn't real. You're very good at this, he murmured during a lull between introductions. She glanced up at him, her expression unreadable. So are you. I'm not doing anything. You're letting me do my job. That's more than most people manage. He didn't know what to say to that. Richard Crawford found them halfway through the night. "Reed!" His boss's voice boomed across the room, and Nolan's stomach dropped. "There you are. I was starting to think you'd bailed on us." "Wouldn't miss it," Nolan said, forcing a smile. Crawford's eyes shifted to Serafina, and his expression changed, sharpened. "And who is this?" "Serafina Vale," she said smoothly, extending her hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you." Crawford shook her hand, but his gaze didn't leave her face. "Vale. That name sounds familiar. Have we met before?" "I don't think so. I work in tech consulting, mostly behind the scenes." "Well, you've certainly made an impression tonight. Reed here's been keeping you all to himself." "Can you blame him?" Serafina said lightly, and Crawford laughed. They talked for another 10 minutes, Crawford probing, Serafina deflecting, Nolan standing there feeling like a prop in someone else's play. Finally, his boss excused himself, but not before clapping Nolan on the shoulder and saying, "Good to see you getting back out there, Reed. Claire would have wanted that." Nolan's chest tightened. He didn't respond. Serafina's hand tightened on his arm, just for a second, and then she steered him toward the bar. "You okay?" she asked quietly. "Fine." "You don't look fine." "I said I'm fine." She didn't push. They got drinks, whiskey for him, sparkling water for her, and found a quiet corner near the windows. The city lights glittered below them, cold and distant. "He didn't mean anything by it," Serafina said after a moment. "I know." "But it still hurt." Nolan looked at her, surprised. "You don't know that." "I do." Something in her voice made him believe her. They stood in silence for a while, watching the crowd, watching the performance continue around them. And for the first time all night, Nolan felt like he could breathe. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For making this bearable." Serafina smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "That's what you paid for." It stung more than it should have. "Fetch someone else." The night ended at midnight. Serafina walked him back to the car, her hand still on his arm, the performance still flawless. The driver opened the door, and Nolan climbed in first. She followed. They sat in silence as the car pulled away from the venue. "You did well tonight," she said finally. "I barely did anything." "Exactly. You didn't try to be someone you're not." "That's rare." He glanced at her. "Is that a compliment?" "It's an observation." "What about you? I was performing," she said simply. "That's what I do." "Do you ever stop?" She looked out the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. "Not often." The car slowed as they approached his neighborhood. Nolan felt something twist in his chest, something that felt dangerously close to disappointment. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Of course." "Why do you do this? The companion thing. You're clearly smart, educated. You could do anything." Serafina's expression didn't change. "Maybe I like the control. Maybe I like being able to walk away whenever I want." "And do you? Walk away?" She turned to look at him, and for the first time all night, he saw something crack in her composure, something real. "Not always," she said softly. The car stopped. Nolan reached for the door handle, but he didn't open it. If I wanted to see you again, outside of this, would that be possible?" Serafina's eyes searched his face, and he couldn't read what she found there. "That's not usually how this works," she said. "I know. But I'm asking anyway." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled a card from her purse and handed it to him. Plain white, no logo, just a phone number written in elegant script. "Call me if you mean it," she said. "Not because you're lonely, not because tonight was easy. Call me if you actually want to know who I am." Nolan took the card. "I do," he said. Serafina smiled, and this time it looked almost sad. "Then I'll answer." He got out of the car and watched it drive away, the card still warm in his hand. When he walked into his apartment, Lily was asleep on the couch, Maria dozing in the chair beside her. He paid Maria, thanked her, carried his daughter to bed, and tucked her in. Then he sat in his kitchen, staring at the card, wondering what the hell he'd just started. He called 3 days later. He told himself he shouldn't, told himself it was a bad idea, that she'd been hired to play a role, that nothing about that night had been real. But he couldn't stop thinking about her. About the way she'd moved through that room like she belonged there. About the way she'd looked at him when Crawford mentioned Claire. About the crack in her voice when she'd said not always. She answered on the second ring. I wasn't sure you'd call. I wasn't sure I would either. But you did. Yeah. There was a pause, and he could hear faint background noise, traffic maybe, or wind. Are you busy? He asked. Not particularly. Why? Do you want to get coffee? Another pause. Yes, she said. I do. They met at a place near his apartment, small and quiet, the kind of coffee shop that didn't try too hard. Serafina arrived 10 minutes late, dressed in jeans and a sweater, her hair down for the first time. She looked different, younger, less like the woman from the gala and more like someone he might actually know. Sorry, she said, sliding into the booth across from him. Traffic was terrible. It's fine. She ordered black coffee. He ordered the same. They sat in awkward silence for a moment, and Nolan realized he had no idea what to say. So, Serafina said finally, her lips quirking into a half smile. What now? I don't know. I've never done this before. Neither have I. Really? Really, the gala thing, that's business. This is not business. No, not business. Nolan exhaled slowly. Then maybe we just talk, like normal people. Are you a normal person? I don't think so. Good, she said. Neither am I. And they did talk. For 2 hours, they sat in that coffee shop and talked about everything and nothing. He told her about Lily, about his work, about the life he'd built in the years since Claire died. She told him about growing up without roots, about moving from city to city, about learning early that the only person you could rely on was yourself. She didn't tell him what she did for a living, not really, just said she worked in tech, consulting, moving between projects. He didn't push, but he noticed things. The way she checked her phone constantly, like she was waiting for something important. The way her eyes scanned the room whenever someone walked in, assessing, calculating. The way she talked about control and distance like they were the only things that mattered. Can I ask you something? He said eventually. You keep asking that, just ask. Why did you agree to this, to meet me again? Serafina looked down at her coffee, her fingers tracing the rim of the cup. Because at the gala, when your boss said that thing about your wife, you looked like you were drowning, and I know what that feels like. What feels like? Being surrounded by people and still feeling completely alone. Nolan swallowed hard. Yeah, I know that too. She looked up and her eyes were brighter than they should have been. I spent my whole life building walls, she said quietly, keeping people out, staying in control. And then I walked into that car and met you, and for some reason, I didn't want to. Didn't want to what? Keep you out. The words hung between them, fragile and dangerous. I don't know what I'm doing, Nolan admitted. I don't know if this is a good idea. I don't know if I'm ready for whatever this is. Neither do I, Serafina said. But I'm here anyway. Why? She smiled, and it was the saddest, most honest thing he'd seen from her. Because with you, I don't have to perform. And I haven't felt that in a very long time. They left the coffee shop together, and when she reached for his hand, he didn't pull away. He didn't know where this was going, didn't know if it would last a week or a month or longer, didn't know if he was making a mistake or taking the first real risk he'd allowed himself since Claire died. But for the first time in years, he wanted to find out. The coffee shop became their place, without either of them deciding it would be. Over the next 3 weeks, they met there 6 times. Always the same booth in the back corner, always black coffee for both of them. Always conversations that started careful and ended honest in ways that left Nolan feeling exposed and grateful in equal measure. Serafina was different outside the formal setting of the gala. Still polished, still controlled, but with cracks showing that she didn't bother to hide from him. She was funny in a dry, unexpected way. She asked questions that cut straight to the heart of things without apology. And she listened, really listened, in a way that made Nolan realize how long it had been since anyone had actually heard him. Tell me about Claire, she said during their 4th meeting, the request landing softly but deliberately. Nolan's hand tightened around his cup. Why? Because you're still wearing your ring. Because you talk about everything except her. Because I think you need to. He looked down at the gold band he'd never been able to remove, even 4 years later. What do you want to know? Whatever you want to tell me. So he told her. About meeting Claire in college, about how she'd been studying education and he'd been buried in engineering coursework and they'd collided in the library over a book they both needed. About how she'd made him laugh when nothing else could. About how she'd believed in him even when he didn't believe in himself. About the pregnancy that had surprised them both but felt right anyway. About Lily's birth and the 3 years they'd had as a family before the diagnosis. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. 6 months from diagnosis to death, and every one of those months had been brutal. She made me promise, Nolan said quietly, staring at his coffee instead of at Serafina. Made me promise I'd keep living, that I'd let Lily have a normal childhood, that I wouldn't turn into one of those people who gets stuck in grief and forgets how to function. And have you kept that promise? I don't know. I'm functioning. I'm raising Lily. I go to work, pay bills, do all the things you're supposed to do. But I don't know if that's the same as living. Serafina reached across the table and covered his hand with hers. The touch was light, careful, asking permission. I think it takes a lot of courage to even ask that question. Or a lot of cowardice. Sometimes I think I'm just going through the motions because it's easier than actually risking anything. Is that what this is? With me? A risk? He looked up and met her eyes, dark and serious and far too perceptive. Yeah, it terrifies me. Good. It should. Anything worth having is terrifying. Is that experience talking? Her expression shifted, something guarded sliding into place. More than you know. Then tell me. You know everything about me now. I barely know anything about you. She pulled her hand back, wrapping both hands around her cup like she needed something to hold on to. What do you want to know? The truth. Who you actually are. Not the version you showed me at the gala or the version you're showing me now. The real version. Serafina was quiet for so long that Nolan thought she might not answer at all. Then she took a breath and started talking. I grew up poor. Not temporarily poor. Not working class, but getting by poor. Actually poor. The kind where you wear the same clothes to school every day and pretend you're not hungry at lunch because there's no money for food. My mom left when I was 6. My dad tried his best, but he was drowning in debt and depression, and I spent most of my childhood being invisible. Nolan watched her face, saw the careful control it took to keep her voice steady. I was good at school, really good. It was the only thing I had that felt like mine. Got a full scholarship to college, worked 3 jobs to cover everything the scholarship didn't. Graduated top of my class, got recruited by a tech startup that was going places. Vailtech? She blinked, surprised. How did you... I looked you up. After the 3rd time we met. I wanted to know who I was spending so much time with. And what did you find? Articles about a tech CEO named Serafina Vale, who founded a major enterprise software company. Net worth in the billions, one of the youngest self-made female billionaires in the country. Multiple awards, magazine covers, the whole thing. Her jaw tightened. So you know. I know you lied about being a hired companion. I know you let me believe you were someone you're not. What I don't know is why. Because for the first time in 15 years, someone looked at me and didn't see a company or a net worth or a deal to be made. You saw a person, and I was so starved for that kind of genuine interaction that I couldn't bring myself to correct you. So you've been lying to me for 3 weeks. Yes. About who you are, about what you do, about everything. Not everything. Everything I've told you about myself, about growing up, about learning to survive, about building walls to protect yourself, that's all true. The only thing I lied about was my current situation. Nolan sat back, trying to process this, trying to reconcile the woman sitting across from him with the CEO he'd read about online, trying to decide if he was angry or impressed or just deeply confused. Why tell me now? Because I can't keep doing this. I can't keep meeting you and pretending and hoping you never figure it out. And because... She stopped, struggling with something. Because I'm falling for you. Actually falling for you, and that scares me more than anything I've ever built or lost. The words hung between them, raw and honest and impossible to take back. I don't know what to say, Nolan admitted. You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know the truth, all of it. And if you want to walk away now, I understand. I lied to you. I let you believe something false because it was convenient for me. That's not okay, and I know it. Nolan looked at her, really looked at her, and saw past the expensive clothes and the careful composure to the woman underneath who was terrified he'd leave. I should walk away, he said slowly. That would be the smart thing, the safe thing. But I don't want to. I don't know why. Maybe because you're the first person since Claire who's made me feel like taking a risk might be worth it. Maybe because you're right that we're both experts at building walls, and I'm tired of living behind mine. I don't know, but I'm not ready to walk away yet. Relief flooded her expression, so visceral it almost hurt to witness. I don't deserve that. Probably not, but I'm giving it to you anyway. She smiled, and it was the first completely unguarded smile he'd seen from her. So what now? Now you tell me everything. No more performances. No more carefully edited versions. I want to know who Serafina Vale actually is when she's not running an empire. So she told him. About building Vale Tech from nothing. About the 16-hour days and the investors who didn't take her seriously and the male partners who tried to push her out. About clawing her way to the top through sheer force of will and learning that success came at the cost of everything else. About the loneliness of being powerful. About how everyone wanted something from her. Money, connections, opportunities. And no one just wanted her. About the relationships that had failed because she couldn't be vulnerable, couldn't let anyone see weakness, couldn't risk being anything other than perfect. About Marcus Chen, her former business partner who tried to stage a coup 5 years ago when the company was at its most vulnerable. About the brutal boardroom battle that had ended with her winning but left her with trust issues she couldn't shake. About the exhaustion of always performing, always being on, always being the person everyone needed her to be instead of the person she actually was. I'm tired, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm so tired of fighting, of proving myself, of living like every day is a battle I have to win or lose everything. Then stop, Nolan said simply. It's not that easy. Why not? Because if I stop being the CEO, if I stop being successful, what's left? Who am I if I'm not Vale Tech? That's what you need to figure out. She looked at him like he'd just suggested she jump off a cliff. I can't just walk away from my company. I'm not saying you should. I'm saying you should figure out who you are outside of it. Because the woman I've been getting to know these past few weeks, she's not a CEO. She's just someone trying to be real for the first time in a long time. And I like her a hell of a lot more than I'd probably like the billionaire. Serafina laughed, surprised and genuine. You're the only person who's ever said something like that to me. Then you're spending time with the wrong people. Apparently. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of all the confessions settling between them. Can I meet her? Serafina asked suddenly. Who? Lily, your daughter. You talk about her constantly. I'd like to meet her, if that's okay. Nolan's chest tightened. This was different. This was bringing Serafina into the part of his life that mattered most, the part he'd protected fiercely for 4 years. That's a big step. I know. But if we're doing this, if we're actually trying to build something real, I should meet the most important person in your life. And if she doesn't like you, then I'll work harder. Kids are honest. If she doesn't like me, it's probably because I'm doing something wrong. Nolan studied her face, searching for any sign that this was just another performance. But all he saw was genuine nervousness and hope. Okay, but we take it slow. No pressure. We just grab lunch or something. Keep it casual. I can do casual. Can you? She smiled. No, but I can try. They met that Saturday at a park near Nolan's apartment. Serafina showed up in jeans and a simple sweater, her hair down, minimal makeup, looking more like a regular person than a billionaire CEO. She'd clearly made an effort to blend in, and Nolan appreciated it even as he recognized how uncomfortable she looked outside her usual armor. Lily was cautious at first, hiding behind Nolan's legs and peeking out at this new person with the wariness children have towards strangers. Hi, Lily, Serafina said, kneeling down to be at eye level. I'm Serafina. Your dad's told me a lot about you. Are you his girlfriend? The question was direct, delivered with a child's complete lack of filter, and Nolan felt his face heat. Lily, it's okay, Serafina said quickly. She looked at Lily seriously, giving the question the respect it deserved. I'm your dad's friend, and I'd like to be your friend too, if that's okay with you. Lily considered this. Do you like coloring? I don't know. I haven't colored in a very long time. Dad bought me new markers, the ones that smell like fruit. Want to try them? Serafina glanced at Nolan, who shrugged helplessly. Sure, I'd love to. They spent the afternoon at a picnic table while Lily colored and chattered about school and her friends and the book she was reading. Serafina listened with the same focused attention she probably gave to business presentations, asking questions and genuinely engaging in a way that won Lily over completely within an hour. Nolan watched them together and felt something dangerous bloom in his chest. Hope, the kind that made you vulnerable, the kind that could destroy you if things went wrong. You're good with her, he said later after Lily had run off to the playground. I'm terrified, Serafina admitted. I have no idea what I'm doing. You're doing fine, better than fine. She likes you. How can you tell? Because she showed you her favorite markers. She only does that with people she trusts. Serafina smiled, watching Lily climb the jungle gym with focused determination. She's amazing. You've done an incredible job with her. I've done my best. Some days that feels like enough. Other days, he trailed off. Other days you wonder if you're failing her. Yeah, you're not. She's happy. She feels safe. She knows she's loved. That's more than a lot of kids get. Speaking from experience? Serafina's expression flickered. Yeah, I am. They sat in comfortable silence, watching Lily play, and Nolan realized this was the most normal he'd felt in years. Not the careful routine he'd built with his daughter, not the performance of being okay, just normal. Like maybe he was allowed to have this. Over the next month, Serafina became a regular part of their lives. She came to Lily's school play, sitting in the audience next to Nolan and cheering when Lily delivered her 3 lines as townsperson number 4. She joined them for pizza dinners and helped with homework, approaching 2nd grade math with the same seriousness she probably brought to quarterly projections. She learned how to braid Lily's hair by watching YouTube tutorials and practicing until she got it right. She was terrible at it. The braids were always lopsided, messy, falling apart within an hour. But Lily didn't care because Serafina tried, and that was what mattered. Nolan watched her navigate this new territory with the same determination she probably brought to building her company, and he found himself falling deeper without meaning to. But the real world kept intruding. Serafina's phone rang constantly. She took calls at odd hours, disappeared for emergency meetings, carried the weight of her company even when she was trying to be present. Nolan saw how it exhausted her, how she struggled to be in 2 places at once, how the woman who wanted to color with his daughter kept colliding with the CEO who had thousands of employees depending on her. I can't keep doing this, she said one night after Lily was asleep. They were sitting on his couch, her head on his shoulder, both of them too tired to pretend everything was fine. Doing what? Living 2 lives, being 2 different people. Something has to give. What do you want to give? She was quiet for a long time. I don't know. That's the problem. I've spent 15 years building Vailtech. It's not just a company, it's proof that I matter, that I survived, that the poor kid nobody believed in could become someone powerful and successful and untouchable. But I'm not happy. I haven't been happy in years. And then I met you and Lily, and suddenly I remember what it feels like to want something that has nothing to do with winning or proving anything, and I don't know how to reconcile those 2 things. Nolan pulled back so he could look at her face. What if you didn't have to? What if you could just step back, let someone else run the company, find a way to be involved without it consuming your entire life? You make it sound simple. It's not simple, but it's possible if you want it to be. What if I fail? What if I step back and realize I'm nothing without the company? That all I am is what I built? Then you'll figure out who you are now. And maybe that person is better than the one running herself into the ground trying to prove something that doesn't need proving anymore. She looked at him with eyes that were too bright, and he saw the fear there. The absolute terror of letting go of the thing that had defined her for so long. I don't know if I'm brave enough. You are. You just have to decide it's worth it. She kissed him then, desperate and searching, and he kissed her back, trying to convey without words that whatever she decided, he'd be there. They started sleeping together after that conversation, though calling it sleeping felt too simple for what it actually was. It was comfort and connection and vulnerability all wrapped up in physical intimacy that neither of them had experienced in years. Nolan hadn't been with anyone since Claire, and Serafina admitted she hadn't let anyone this close in longer than she wanted to admit. It was awkward sometimes, fumbling and imperfect and punctuated by laughter when things didn't work quite right. But it was real, and that made it better than anything either of them had experienced before. Lily asked questions, of course. Why was Miss Sarah here so early in the morning? Why did she have her own toothbrush in the bathroom? Were they going to get married? We're just spending time together, Nolan said carefully, seeing if this works. It works, Lily said with the confident certainty of a 7-year-old. I like her. You should marry her. It's more complicated than that, kiddo. Why? Because grown-up relationships are complicated. That's a dumb reason. Nolan laughed despite himself. You're probably right. But the complications were real, and they got worse before they got better. The media found out about them eventually. Some photographer caught them leaving a restaurant together, and within 24 hours there were articles speculating about the mysterious man in tech billionaire Serafina Vale's life. The headlines were invasive and cruel, dissecting Nolan's background, his salary, his status as a widower, whether he was after her money. Nolan hated it, hated the attention, hated the assumptions, hated that Lily's name got mentioned in some of the articles. Serafina handled it with practiced ease, releasing a brief statement through her PR team that essentially told everyone to mind their own business. But Nolan saw how it affected her, how she checked her phone more frequently, how she tensed whenever they went out in public, how the walls she'd been slowly lowering started going back up. We can stop this, he said one evening after a particularly brutal round of articles. If it's too much, if I'm making your life harder. You're not making it harder. They are. The people who think they have a right to every detail of my life just because I'm successful. But they wouldn't be writing about you if you weren't with me. They'd find something else, they always do. This isn't about you, Nolan. This is about me refusing to live my life according to what strangers think I should do. And what do you want to do? She looked at him, and her expression was fierce and determined and a little bit scared. I want to keep this. Whatever this is, I want to see where it goes. I want Lily to keep showing me her drawings. I want to keep burning dinner in your kitchen. I want to figure out who I am when I'm not performing for everyone. Even if it costs you something? Especially then, because the thing I'm learning from you is that some things are worth the cost. They held each other that night, neither of them sleeping much, both of them aware that they were standing at a precipice, and the only way forward was to jump. The pressure from Valetech intensified. Board members started questioning Serafina's focus. Investors noticed her reduced hours. Marcus Chen, who'd been quiet for years, started making noise again, spreading rumors that Serafina was losing her edge, that her personal life was compromising her professional judgment. Nolan watched her handle crisis after crisis, saw the toll it took on her, and felt powerless to help. Talk to me, he said after a particularly brutal board meeting left her shaking with rage and exhaustion. They want me to choose the board. They didn't say it explicitly, but the message was clear. Focus on the company or focus on my personal life. I can't do both. What did you say? I told them I'd think about it, which is corporate speak for go to hell, but with enough politeness that they can't fire me for it. Can they fire you? It's your company. They can make things very difficult. They can call for votes of no confidence. They can pressure major shareholders. They can make my life hell until I either step down or they force me out. Then step down. She stared at him. What? Step down. Walk away. You just said it yourself. This is killing you. The company you built to prove you mattered has become the thing that's destroying any chance you have at actually mattering to people who care about you for reasons that have nothing to do with success. I can't just walk away from Valetech. Why not? You've got competent people who can run it. You've got enough money that you and your great-great-grandchildren will never have to work. What are you actually holding on to? My identity. My proof that I survived. She broke off, her voice cracking. My evidence that I'm not that poor kid anymore who nobody cared about. Nolan pulled her close, letting her fall apart against his chest. You're not that kid. You haven't been for years. And the only person who still needs you to prove it is you. She cried then, really cried. The kind of crying that came from years of holding everything together and finally letting it break. When she pulled herself together, she looked at him with red eyes and smudged makeup, and an expression that was both terrified and determined. If I do this, if I actually walk away, it has to be on my terms, not because they pushed me out, not because I failed, because I chose something more important. Okay, then we make it your choice. How? We show them that you're making a decision from a position of strength, not weakness. We show them that you're choosing life over empire, and we do it in a way that they can't twist into failure. You make it sound possible. It is possible, if you're brave enough. She kissed him, hard and desperate, and whispered against his lips, "Help me be brave enough." "I will, we both will." And together they started planning the announcement that would change everything. The invitation arrived on a Thursday afternoon, delivered by courier in a cream-colored envelope with Serafina's name embossed in gold lettering across the front. Nolan stared at it, sitting on his kitchen counter, feeling the weight of what it represented even before he opened it. 3 months had passed since that first coffee. 3 months of late-night phone calls, stolen afternoons when Lily was at school, dinners that stretched past midnight because neither of them wanted to say goodbye. 3 months of Serafina slowly, carefully, letting him see pieces of who she really was beneath the polished surface she showed the world. But she'd never invited him into her world, not like this. He picked up the envelope and slid his finger under the flap. The invitation was heavy cardstock, professionally printed, formal in a way that made his stomach clench. Venture Tech Summit, Annual Industry Gala, the Ashford Hotel. Black tie required. And at the bottom, handwritten in Serafina's elegant script, "Bring Lily. I want you both there." Nolan set the invitation down and called her. She answered on the first ring, her voice slightly breathless, like she'd been moving fast. "Did you get it?" "Yeah, I got it." "And?" "Serafina, what is this?" There was a pause, and he could hear the ambient noise of wherever she was. Voices, the click of heels on hard floors, the distant hum of activity. "It's the biggest tech industry event of the year," she said carefully. "Investors, founders, media, everyone who matters in the sector will be there." "That's not what I'm asking." Another pause, longer this time. "I want you there," she said quietly. "Both of you. I know it's a lot to ask, but I need you there." "Why?" "Because I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of keeping my life in separate boxes where nothing touches. And because if I'm going to do what I'm planning to do, I need to know that something real exists outside of all this." Nolan's grip tightened on the phone. "What are you planning to do?" "I'll explain everything when you get here. Please, Nolan, trust me." He should have said no. Should have recognized the warning signs, the sudden urgency in her voice, the way she was asking for something she'd never asked for before. But 3 months had taught him that when Serafina asked for trust, she meant it. "Okay," he said, "we'll be there." He could hear her exhale, relief flooding through the line. "Thank you. I'll send a car Saturday at 5. The event starts at 7, but I want time with you both before everything begins." "Serafina, I love you," she said suddenly, and the words hit him like a physical blow. "I know I haven't said it before. I know I should have, but I do. I love you, and I love Lily, and I need you to remember that no matter what happens this weekend. You're scaring me. Don't be scared. Just be there, please." The line went dead before he could respond. Nolan stood in his kitchen, staring at the invitation, and felt the first cold thread of dread work its way down his spine. Telling Lily about the event was easier than he expected. She was excited about the dress Serafina had sent, pale blue with layers of tulle that made her look like something out of a fairy tale. She'd been asking about Serafina constantly lately, when they'd see her again, whether she was Daddy's girlfriend, whether that meant she might stay. Nolan had deflected most of the questions because he didn't know the answers himself. But watching Lily spin in front of the mirror, her face lit up with pure joy, he felt something shift in his chest. This wasn't just about him anymore. Whatever was happening with Serafina, Lily was already part of it, already invested, already hoping, and if this went wrong, she'd be the one who paid for it. "Dad?" Lily stopped spinning and looked at him seriously. "Is Miss Sarah okay?" "What do you mean?" "She sounded sad on the phone yesterday. Like when you get sad about mom but try to hide it. Nolan's throat tightened. His daughter was 7 years old and already too perceptive for her own good. She's just been working a lot, he said carefully. Sometimes grown-ups get stressed. Is she going to leave? What? No, why would you think that? Lily shrugged, but her eyes were too bright. Because people leave sometimes, and I really like her. I don't want her to go. Nolan knelt down and pulled his daughter into a hug, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo and trying to keep his own fears from showing. She's not going anywhere, he said, hoping it was true. I promise. But even as he said it, he remembered the tone in Serafina's voice when she'd said she loved him. The way it had sounded like goodbye. It didn't. The car arrived exactly at 5. It wasn't the same sedan from the gala. This was something else entirely. A town car with tinted windows and a driver in a full suit who opened the door without speaking. The interior was even more luxurious than before, all soft leather and ambient lighting and a bottle of sparkling cider waiting in an ice bucket with Lily's name on a small card. Lily's eyes went wide. Is this for me? Nolan checked the card. For Lily. Because every princess deserves something special. S. Yeah, sweetheart. It's for you. She bounced in her seat, carefully pouring herself a glass, while Nolan tried to reconcile the woman who sent personalized gifts to his daughter with the woman who'd sounded so desperate on the phone. The drive took 40 minutes, cutting through the city and out toward the waterfront where the old industrial district had been transformed into something sleek and expensive. The Ashford Hotel rose above the harbor, all glass and steel in deliberate elegance. But the car didn't stop at the main entrance. Instead, it pulled around back, through a private gate, and into an underground garage where an elevator waited with its doors already open. A woman in a tailored suit stood beside it holding a tablet. Mr. Reed, I'm Caroline, Miss Vale's executive assistant. She's waiting for you on the penthouse level. Please, follow me. Nolan took Lily's hand and followed, feeling increasingly like he'd stepped into someone else's life. The elevator was glass-walled, offering a dizzying view of the city as they rose. Lily pressed her face against the window, gasping at the height, while Nolan's mind raced through possibilities, trying to understand what was happening. Executive assistant, penthouse level, Miss Vale. The elevator doors opened directly into a suite that looked like something out of a magazine, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. Modern furniture arranged with precision, art on the walls that probably cost more than Nolan made in a year. And standing in the center of it all, silhouetted against the evening light, was Serafina. She turned when they entered, and Nolan's breath caught. She was wearing a gown that looked like liquid silver, elegant and devastating in equal measure. Her hair was swept up, diamonds at her throat and ears, her makeup flawless. She looked like power incarnate, but her eyes were terrified. Lily, she said, her voice warm despite the fear underneath. You look beautiful. Lily let go of Nolan's hand and ran to her, wrapping small arms around Serafina's waist. Serafina's composure cracked for just a moment, her hand coming up to rest on Lily's head, her eyes squeezing shut. I missed you, Lily said. I missed you too, sweetheart. Nolan approached slowly, taking in the suite, the setup, the way Caroline had disappeared into another room like she'd done this 1,000 times. Serafina, what's going on? She gently extracted herself from Lily's embrace and crossed to a side table where drinks waited. She poured 2 glasses of wine, handed one to Nolan, and took a long sip of her own before speaking. I need to tell you something, she said quietly. Something I should have told you a long time ago. Okay. When we met, when you hired me for the gala, there was a mistake, a miscommunication between the agency and my office. I wasn't supposed to be there at all. Nolan's hand tightened on his glass. I don't understand. I don't work for Elegant Companions. I never have. She paused, her jaw working like the words were physically difficult to form. I'm the founder and CEO of Vale Tech Industries. I own a tech empire worth somewhere north of $8 billion. And that night, I was supposed to be attending a completely different event across town, but the addresses got mixed up, and I ended up in your car instead. The room tilted. Nolan set his glass down carefully, afraid he might drop it. What? I should have told you immediately. I know that. But when I got in that car and you looked at me like I was just a person, Not a company, not a deal, not something to acquire or destroy, just a person. And I hadn't felt that in so long that I couldn't bring myself to correct it. You lied to me. Yes. For 3 months. Yes. Lily was watching them both, her expression confused. Serafina glanced at her, then back at Nolan. Lily, sweetheart, there's a room through that door with a TV and some games. Could you give your dad and me a few minutes to talk? Are you fighting? No, we need to discuss grown-up things. I promise we'll come get you soon. Lily looked at Nolan for confirmation. He nodded, not trusting his voice. She went reluctantly, glancing back twice before disappearing into the other room. The moment she was gone, Nolan turned on Serafina. A tech CEO. $8 billion. And you let me think, what exactly? That you were an escort? That you needed money? That any of this was real? It was real, Serafina said fiercely. Everything between us was real. The lying about who I am, that's the only thing that wasn't. That's not a small thing, Serafina. That's everything. I know, and I'm sorry. But please understand, my entire life, people only see the empire, the money, the power. They want something from me, or they want to destroy me, or they want to use me to climb higher. No one has ever just wanted me, just the person underneath all of it, until you. So you built our entire relationship on a lie because you wanted to feel normal? Yes. And that was selfish and wrong, and I'm not asking you to forgive me, but I'm asking you to understand why. Nolan paced to the window, staring out at the city spread below them, trying to process information that didn't fit into any framework he understood. Why tell me now? Because tonight, at that gala, everything comes to a head. My ex-business partner, Marcus Chen, the man who tried to push me out of my own company 5 years ago and failed, he's been quietly buying up shares and building alliances. Tonight, he's planning to make a move, try to force a vote, try to take control of Vailtech while the entire industry is watching. And you want me and Lily here for that? I want you here because after tonight, everything changes. One way or another, I'm not going to be the same person I was when I woke up this morning. And I needed to know that something real exists outside of this world I've built. I needed to know that if I lose everything, I don't lose you too. Nolan turned to face her, and the look in her eyes nearly broke him. She was terrified. Actually, genuinely terrified in a way he'd never seen from her before. What are you going to do? I'm going to make a choice, she said quietly, between the empire and the life I actually want. Serafina, I've spent 15 years building Vailtech. 15 years sacrificing everything, relationships, health, happiness, for a company that was supposed to prove I was worth something. And it did. It made me powerful and successful and untouchable. But it also made me empty. And then I met you, and for the first time in my entire adult life, I felt like maybe there was something more important than winning. You can't just walk away from an $8 billion company. Watch me. The words hung in the air between them, heavy and absolute. What about the people who depend on you, your employees, the investors? I have a succession plan. My COO, Rebecca Lynn, is more than capable of running the company, maybe even better than I am at this point. The board will fight it. Marcus will try to use it as ammunition, but if I'm going to have any chance at a real life, I have to let go of the one that's slowly killing me. Nolan wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she was being reckless, throwing away something irreplaceable, making a decision based on fear instead of logic. But looking at her face, at the exhaustion carved into every line, at the desperate hope in her eyes, he recognized something he'd felt himself not that long ago. The moment when you realize that surviving isn't the same as living. You're sure about this? No, but I'm doing it anyway. He crossed the room and took her hands in his. They were cold, trembling slightly despite her controlled exterior. Then I'm with you, he said. Whatever happens tonight, we're with you. Serafina's composure finally shattered. She pressed her forehead against his shoulder, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps that might have been sobs if she'd let them be. I don't deserve you, she whispered. Yeah, well, I don't deserve you either, so maybe we're even. She pulled back, laughing and crying at the same time, her perfect makeup finally showing cracks. I need to fix my face. You look fine. I look like a disaster. Then you look like a beautiful disaster. She kissed him, hard and desperate, and he kissed her back, tasting salt and wine and fear and hope all mixed together. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. Thank you for coming. Thank you for bringing Lily. Thank you for not walking out. Where would I go? Somewhere safer than this. Safer's overrated. She smiled, fragile and real, and went to repair her makeup while Nolan tried to steady his own racing heart. The gala was chaos dressed up as elegance. The ballroom was twice the size of Crawford's event, filled with people who radiated money and power and barely concealed ambition. Nolan recognized some faces from news articles, tech blogs, financial reports. These weren't corporate middle managers playing dress-up. These were the people who actually shaped the industry. And Serafina moved through them like a queen through her court. She kept Nolan and Lily close, introducing them to investors and founders and journalists with an ease that was almost frightening. Lily, to her credit, handled it with remarkable grace for a 7-year-old, shaking hands and smiling politely and occasionally whispering questions to Nolan when she didn't understand something. But the tension was palpable. Nolan could feel it in the way people looked at Serafina. With admiration, yes, but also calculation. Wondering what her next move would be. Wondering if this was the year she finally stumbled. He spotted Marcus Chen halfway through the evening. The man was exactly what Nolan expected. Tall, polished, with the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. He was holding court near the bar, surrounded by a cluster of people who hung on his every word. When he noticed Serafina, his smile widened. Serafina, what a surprise to see you here. It's my company's event, Marcus. Where else would I be? Of course. I just thought you might be too busy with... His eyes slid to Nolan and Lily, dismissive and calculating. Other priorities. My priorities are none of your concern, aren't they? I mean, the board has been wondering. You've been distracted lately, missing meetings, delegating responsibilities you used to handle personally. Some people are starting to question whether your heart is still in this. Nolan felt Serafina's Hintian tighten on his arm, her nails digging in slightly. My commitment to Vailtech is as strong as ever. Is it? Because I've been having conversations with board members, with major shareholders, and there seems to be a consensus forming that maybe it's time for new leadership, someone who can give the company the attention it deserves. You mean someone like you? I mean someone who isn't splitting their focus between building an empire and playing house with... His eyes flicked to Nolan again. Civilians. Lily tugged on Nolan's sleeve. Dad, I don't like him. Marcus's expression curdled. Charming. She's 7, Nolan said coldly, and she's a better judge of character than most adults I know. Clearly she gets that from her mother. You certainly didn't bring much to the table. The words hit like a slap. Nolan felt his jaw tighten, felt rage flood through him hot and immediate. But before he could respond, Serafina stepped forward, her voice dropping to something dangerous. Speak to him like that again, and I will destroy you. Not the corporate version, the real version. I will take everything you've built and burn it to the ground, and I will smile while I do it. Are we clear? Marcus's smile didn't waver. Threats, Serafina? That's beneath you. That's a promise, and you know I keep my promises. They stared at each other for a long moment, and Nolan could feel the years of history between them. Betrayal, ambition, war conducted in boardrooms, and stock prices. Finally, Marcus stepped back. This isn't over. No, Serafina agreed. It's not. He walked away, his entourage following like remoras behind a shark. Nolan exhaled slowly. That's the guy trying to take your company? That's him. He's an asshole. Yes, a very rich, very connected asshole who's been planning this move for years. Lily pulled on Serafina's dress. Are you in trouble? Serafina knelt down, smoothing Lily's hair back with gentle fingers. Maybe, but it's going to be okay. I promise. Can we help? You already are, sweetheart. You're helping just by being here. An assistant appeared at Serafina's elbow, whispering something urgently. Serafina's expression hardened. It's time, she said quietly. Time for what? The main event. She stood, took Nolan's hand, and led them toward the stage at the far end of the ballroom, where a podium had been set up. The crowd began to notice, conversations falling silent, attention shifting. By the time they reached the front, every eye in the room was on them. Serafina released Nolan's hand and stepped up to the podium, tapping the microphone twice. The sound echoed through the sudden silence. "Good evening. Thank you all for coming tonight. I know you're expecting the usual speeches, growth projections, strategic initiatives, congratulations all around. But tonight, I'm going to do something different." She paused, her gaze sweeping the room, landing briefly on Marcus before moving on. 15 years ago, I founded Vailtech in a shared office space with a laptop, a dream, and more ambition than sense. I built this company from nothing into what it is today. A leader in enterprise solutions, a force in the tech sector, a brand that matters, and I'm incredibly proud of that achievement. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This wasn't the usual corporate speech. This was something else. But building an empire costs more than money. It costs time. It costs relationships. It costs the parts of yourself that make you human. And for a long time, I was willing to pay that price. I told myself it was worth it, that success justified the sacrifice. Nolan's chest tightened. He could see where this was going. Recently, though, I've realized something. I've been so focused on building something that would prove I was valuable that I forgot to build a life worth living. I forgot that power without purpose is just noise. And I forgot that the people who matter most aren't the ones in the boardroom. They're the ones who see you when you're weak and choose to stay anyway. She looked directly at Nolan, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "So tonight, I'm making an announcement. Effective immediately, I'm stepping down as CEO of Vailtech Industries." The room erupted. Voices rose in shock, in anger, in confusion. Board members surged forward. Marcus's face twisted with something between triumph and fury. Investors started shouting questions. Serafina held up a hand and somehow, impossibly, the room quieted again. "Rebecca Lynn, our current COO, will assume the role of CEO. She has my complete confidence and the full support of the transition team we've assembled. I will remain on the board as a non-executive advisor, but day-to-day operations will be entirely in her hands." "This is insane," someone shouted. Marcus, probably. "This is a choice," Serafina corrected. "My choice. And I'm making it because I finally understand that the only empire worth building is the one made of people who love you, not people who fear you." She stepped back from the podium, and the room exploded again. Security moved in, forming a barrier between Serafina and the surging crowd. Her assistant materialized, guiding them toward a side exit. Nolan grabbed Lily's hand and followed, moving fast through corridors that twisted and turned until they emerged in a private room away from the chaos. The moment the door closed, Serafina collapsed into a chair, her hands shaking. "I did it," she whispered. "I actually did it." Nolan knelt beside her, taking her cold hands in his. "You did. They're going to destroy me, the press, the investors, Marcus. They're going to tear me apart. Let them try." "Nolan, you don't understand. This is career suicide, financial suicide. I just walked away from everything." "No, you walked toward something. That's different." She looked at him, tears finally spilling over, and he realized she wasn't afraid of losing the company. She was afraid he'd realize what she'd given up and blame her for it later. "I don't regret it," he said firmly. "Whatever happens next, I don't regret being the reason you made this choice. And neither should you. But what if? No what ifs. You made the call. Now we deal with whatever comes next, together." Lily climbed into Serafina's lap, wrapping small arms around her neck. "You were really brave," she said seriously. "Like a superhero." Serafina laughed, broken and wet. "I don't feel very brave." "That's what makes it brave. Doing the scary thing anyway." Nolan's throat tightened. His daughter, teaching lessons about courage to a woman who'd just given up an empire. Serafina hugged Lily tight, pressing her face into the girl's hair, and Nolan saw the exact moment she stopped being the CEO and became just Serafina. A woman who'd made an impossible choice and was terrified it might not be enough. The door burst open. Marcus strode in, flanked by two board members Nolan didn't recognize, his face flushed with fury. What the hell was that? Serafina set Lily down gently and stood, her composure snapping back into place like armor. "That was me making a decision you've been trying to force for years. You wanted me out? Congratulations. I'm out." You don't get to do this on your terms, Serafina. You don't get to blow up the company and walk away clean. Watch me. The board will fight this. The shareholders will sue. You violated a dozen fiduciary responsibilities by making a unilateral decision of this magnitude without consultation. Actually, I consulted extensively with the transition team, our legal counsel, and every major shareholder except you. The paperwork is already filed. Rebecca is already in place. By the time you finish threatening me, she'll be addressing the press conference we scheduled for 20 minutes from now. Marcus's face went purple. You planned this. You've been planning this for weeks. Months, actually. I'm very thorough. This is revenge, because I tried to oust you 5 years ago. This has nothing to do with you. For once, Marcus, you're not the center of the story. I made this choice for me, because I'm tired of being at war, and I'm tired of winning battles that don't matter. You're making a mistake. Maybe. But it's my mistake to make. One of the board members stepped forward, his expression less hostile than Marcus's, but still deeply concerned. Serafina, please, think about this. Sleep on it. We can postpone the announcement. Say you were feeling unwell. Buy time to... No. The announcement stands. My decision is final. But the company will be fine. Better than fine. Rebecca is more qualified than I ever was to run day-to-day operations. She doesn't have my ego or my need for control. She'll make Veil Tech stronger than I could have. And what will you do? Serafina glanced at Nolan, at Lily, and something in her expression softened. I'm going to build a life. The kind of life that actually means something. Marcus laughed, harsh and bitter. You're throwing away billions of dollars for what? A widower and his kid? You've lost your mind. Nolan stepped forward, putting himself between Marcus and Serafina. Get out. Excuse me? You heard me? Get out. You've said your piece. Now leave. Marcus looked at him like he was an insect. Who the hell do you think you are? I'm the person she chose. And right now, that makes me the person telling you to leave before this gets worse for everyone involved. For a moment, Nolan thought Marcus might actually throw a punch. The man's hands clenched, his jaw working, rage radiating off him in waves. But then Serafina spoke, her voice cold and final. Marcus, go. You don't have any power here anymore, and you never really did. The words landed like a death sentence. Marcus stared at her for a long, venom-filled moment. Then he turned and stormed out, the board members trailing behind him like confused children. The moment they were gone, Serafina's knees buckled. Nolan caught her, holding her upright while she gasped for air, the adrenaline finally crashing, leaving nothing but exhaustion and fear in its wake. I can't believe I did that, she whispered. I can. What if I'm wrong? What if this destroys everything? Then we'll build something new. From scratch. Together. She pulled back, looking up at him with red-rimmed eyes and smudged makeup and an expression so vulnerable it hurt to witness. I love you, she said again. And I'm terrified that won't be enough. It's enough for me, Nolan said simply. The question is whether it's enough for you. Serafina closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, something had shifted. Some final decision made, some last bridge burned. It is, she said. It's more than enough. The fallout began before they even left the hotel. Serafina's phone started ringing the moment they stepped into the hallway, and it didn't stop. Caroline appeared from somewhere, her face pale and tight, holding a tablet that was lighting up with notifications faster than anyone could read them. The press is already running stories, she said, her voice professionally calm despite the obvious panic underneath. Bloomberg, TechCrunch, The Wall Street Journal. They're calling it everything from a strategic pivot to a complete meltdown. Let them call it whatever they want, Serafina said, but her voice shook slightly. The board is requesting an emergency meeting, tonight. Tell them no. Serafina, I said no. I've made my announcement. Rebecca is handling the transition. They can direct all questions to her. Caroline hesitated, glancing at Nolan and Lily, before looking back at Serafina. There are reporters downstairs, a lot of them. They're blocking the main entrance. Then we leave through the back. They're there too. Serafina closed her eyes briefly, and Nolan watched her pull together some reserve of strength he wasn't sure she actually had left. Fine, we go through the front, head high, no comments, just keep moving. Miss Vale, I really think, Caroline, I trust you. You've been with me for 8 years and you've never let me down. But right now, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Caroline's expression softened slightly. Always. Then get us out of here. They moved as a unit through the hotel corridors, security forming a loose perimeter around them. Lily held tight to Nolan's hand, her earlier excitement replaced with visible confusion and fear. Nolan picked her up, settling her on his hip even though she was getting too big for it, and felt her arms wrap around his neck. Dad, why are people yelling? Because sometimes grown-ups don't know how to handle change. Are we in trouble? No, baby. We're okay. But he wasn't sure that was true. The lobby was chaos. Reporters had somehow gotten past hotel security and were crowding the space with cameras and microphones and shouted questions that blurred together into incomprehensible noise. Nolan saw the moment they spotted Serafina, saw the surge forward like a wave breaking. Security tightened around them, forming a wedge, pushing through. Serafina kept her head up, her expression blank, refusing to acknowledge any of the questions being hurled at her. Miss Vale, why are you stepping down? Is this related to the hostile takeover attempt? Who's the man with you? Are you selling your shares? Is Valetech in financial trouble? Nolan tucked Lily's face against his shoulder, blocking her view of the cameras, and stayed as close to Serafina as possible. Her hand found his free one and held tight, and he could feel her trembling despite the calm mask she wore. They made it to the car, security holding back the crowd long enough for them to pile inside. The door slammed shut, muffling the noise, and the driver pulled away fast enough that Nolan felt the momentum push him back against the seat. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Lily lifted her head and looked at Serafina with worried eyes. Are you okay? Serafina's mask cracked. She made a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and pressed her hands over her face. No, she said honestly. I'm not okay. But I will be. Promise? I promise. Nolan reached over and took Serafina's hand again, threading their fingers together. She held on like she was drowning, her grip almost painful. Where are we going? He asked quietly. My house. It's in the hills, about 40 minutes from here. Private. Secure. The only place I can think of where we won't be followed. Okay. Nolan, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't think it would be this bad this fast. Hey, look at me. She turned, and her eyes were devastated. We're still here, he said. We're still with you. That hasn't changed. But everything else has. Yeah, everything else has, and we'll figure it out. She nodded, but he could see she didn't believe him. Could see the fear eating at her, the certainty that she'd made a catastrophic mistake and dragged them down with her. The rest of the drive passed in tense silence, broken only by Lily's occasional questions and Serafina's increasingly fragile answers. Serafina's house was not what Nolan expected. He'd imagined something modern and sterile, all glass and sharp angles, the kind of place that looked impressive but didn't feel like a home. Instead, it was an old craftsman-style house nestled into the hillside, surrounded by trees and gardens that looked like they'd been growing wild for years. The interior was warm, wood floors, comfortable furniture, art that looked personal instead of expensive, books everywhere. It looked like a place where someone actually lived. This is beautiful, Nolan said, setting Lily down carefully. It was my grandmother's, Serafina said quietly, moving through the space like she was seeing it for the first time. She left it to me when she died. I've barely spent any time here in the last 5 years. Too busy working, but I couldn't bring myself to sell it. Why not? Because it's the only place that ever felt like home. Lily was already exploring, running her hands over furniture and peering at the framed photographs on the walls. She stopped in front of one, a young Serafina, maybe 10 or 11, standing next to an elderly woman with the same dark eyes. Is this your grandma? Yes. She looks nice. She was. She was the only person who ever believed I could be more than what I came from. Serafina's phone rang again, the sound sharp and intrusive in the quiet house. She pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and silenced it without answering. You should probably take that, Nolan said. No, I shouldn't. If I start taking calls now, I won't stop until I'm right back where I started. What about Rebecca, your COO? She can handle it. That's why I chose her. But even as she said it, her hand tightened around the phone, and Nolan could see the effort it took not to look at it again. The evening dissolved into something strange, and suspended. Serafina ordered food delivered, though none of them ate much. Lily eventually fell asleep on the couch, exhausted by the emotional whiplash of the day. Nolan carried her to the guest room Serafina pointed out, tucked her in, and came back to find Serafina standing at the window, staring out at the city lights below. "It's already everywhere," she said without turning around. "Every news site, every social media platform. They're calling it the collapse of Vailtech. Some are saying I had a nervous breakdown. Others are speculating about a scandal. Marcus gave an interview saying he's deeply concerned about the company's future under uncertain leadership. He's an asshole. He's smart. He's positioning himself as the stable choice while I look like I'm falling apart. Are you?" She turned to face him, and the raw honesty in her expression was almost too much to witness. "I don't know. Maybe. I just gave up everything I've worked for my entire adult life, and I have no idea if I made the right choice." "You made the brave choice." "Brave and right aren't always the same thing." Nolan crossed to her, taking her shoulders gently. "What would staying have cost you?" "What do you mean?" "If you'd kept going, kept fighting Marcus, kept running the company, kept living that life, what would it have cost?" Serafina looked away. "Everything." "Then you made the right choice." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I've been where you are." Different situation, same question. After Claire died, I could have let grief destroy me. Could have stopped functioning, stopped being a father, stopped caring about anything. It would have been easier than trying to build a life from the wreckage, but I didn't. And yeah, some days I still don't know if I made the right choice. Some days I think I'm barely holding it together. But then I look at Lily, and I remember why I keep going. What if I regret this? What if 6 months from now I wake up and realize I threw away something irreplaceable for a relationship that doesn't last? The words stung, but he understood where they came from. Fear. The desperate need to protect herself from potential pain by imagining the worst possible outcome first. "Then you'll have learned something important about yourself," he said carefully, "and you'll build something new. That's what people do. We make choices, we live with them, we adjust when we have to." "That's not very reassuring." "I'm not here to reassure you. I'm here to be honest with you." She stared at him for a long moment, and then, unexpectedly, she laughed. "You're the worst motivational speaker ever." "I know. It's one of my many talents." She leaned into him, resting her forehead against his chest, and he wrapped his arms around her, holding her while the adrenaline and fear slowly drained away. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For not telling me everything will be okay. For not pretending this isn't terrifying." "It is terrifying, but we're still here." They stood like that for a while, just breathing together, letting the chaos of the evening settle into something manageable. Eventually, Serafina pulled back. "I should check on a few things. Make sure Rebecca has what she needs for tomorrow's meetings." "I thought you weren't taking calls." "This is different. She's covering for me. The least I can do is make sure she's not drowning." She disappeared into what looked like a home office, and Nolan found himself alone in the living room, surrounded by the remnants of a life Serafina had barely lived. He found himself drawn to the photographs on the walls. Serafina as a child, serious and watchful. Serafina as a teenager standing in front of some building with a backpack slung over one shoulder. Serafina in her 20s, accepting what looked like an award, her smile tight and professional. No recent photos, nothing from the last 5 years, just frozen moments from a past that felt like it belonged to someone else entirely. He heard voices from the office. Serafina's calm and controlled, someone else's rapid and stressed. The conversation went on for 20 minutes before Serafina emerged, looking more exhausted than before. "Rebecca's handling the press. The board is scheduling a formal meeting for Monday. I have to be there." "Okay. They're going to grill me, question every decision, try to find a way to reverse this." "Can they?" "Not legally. I structured the transition carefully, but they can make things difficult." "Then we'll deal with difficult." She smiled, tired and grateful. "Why do you keep saying we?" "Because you're not alone in this anymore, whether you like it or not." "I like it. I'm just not used to it." They ended up on the couch, Serafina curled against him, neither of them really sleeping, but not quite awake either. Somewhere around 3 in the morning, her phone lit up with a notification that made her inhale sharply. "What is it?" "Stock price. Vailtech dropped 18% since the announcement." "Is that bad?" It's a bloodbath. Investors are panicking, selling off shares. Marcus is probably buying them up as fast as he can. Will Rebecca be okay? If she can stabilize things in the next 72 hours, yes. If not, she didn't finish the sentence. Nolan pulled her closer. Then we hope she can. Morning came too fast and brought reality with it. Lily woke up confused about where they were, and it took several minutes of gentle explanation before she understood they were at Serafina's house and would be staying for a while. She accepted it with the resilient adaptability of children, more concerned about whether there was cereal for breakfast than about the corporate drama swirling around them. Serafina made pancakes, badly, with too much flour and not enough milk, but the attempt was endearing enough that both Nolan and Lily ate them without complaint. "These are interesting," Nolan said diplomatically. "They're terrible. You can say it." "They're terrible," Lily agreed cheerfully, "but I like them anyway." Serafina laughed, and for a moment she looked younger, less burdened, like maybe this version of her life wasn't completely impossible. The moment shattered when someone knocked on the door. Serafina froze, her expression going carefully blank. "I'm not expecting anyone." "Want me to get it?" "No, stay here with Lily." She moved to the door, checked the security camera feed on her phone, and relaxed slightly. "It's Rebecca." She opened the door, and a woman in her early 40s entered, dressed in a sharp suit despite the early hour, her expression a mixture of concern and exhaustion. "I'm sorry to show up unannounced," Rebecca said, "but we need to talk." "Of course. Come in." Rebecca's eyes swept the room, taking in Nolan and Lily, the breakfast dishes, the lived-in quality of the space. Her expression softened slightly. "So this is why you did it?" "Partly." "I don't blame you. If I had something worth protecting, I might have made the same choice." Serafina gestured to the table, and they all sat, though Lily soon got bored and wandered off to explore the house some more. Rebecca pulled out her tablet, bringing up charts and reports that meant nothing to Nolan but clearly meant everything to Serafina. "The board meeting is Monday at 9. They're going to push for a reversal, claim you acted impulsively, cite fiduciary duty, threaten legal action if you don't return." "Let them threaten. Serafina, they have grounds. The stock drop alone gives them ammunition. The stock will recover once people realize you're running things." "Maybe. But in the meantime, Marcus is consolidating power. He's convinced 3 board members to side with him, and he's working on 2 more. If he gets a majority, he can force changes you won't like." "Such as?" "Such as removing you from the board entirely, stripping your advisory role, freezing your equity until a formal review determines whether your actions constituted gross negligence." Serafina's jaw tightened. "He can't do that." "He can try. And with the current panic, he might succeed." Nolan listened to the conversation, understanding maybe half of it, but recognizing the threat clearly enough. Marcus wasn't just trying to take over the company. He was trying to destroy Serafina's credibility, her financial security, her ability to walk away clean. "What do you need from me?" Serafina asked quietly. "I need you at that meeting. I need you to show the board you're still mentally competent, still capable of rational thought, still the woman who built this company from nothing. If you don't show up, or if you show up and fall apart, Marcus wins. I'll be there." "And you'll hold it together?" "Yes." Rebecca glanced at Nolan, her expression unreadable. "Is he helping or hurting?" "Helping," Serafina said firmly. "He's the only reason I'm still standing." "Then keep him close. You're going to need all the support you can get." She stood, gathering her things. "I have to get back to the office. Fire drills all day." "But Serafina—" She paused at the door. "I meant what I said at the gala. You made the right choice. For you. Don't let them make you doubt that." After she left, Serafina sat motionless at the table, staring at nothing. "You okay?" Nolan asked. "Monday's going to be brutal." "Then we'll get through Monday." "You keep saying that like it's simple." "It's not simple, but it's true." She looked at him, and her eyes were haunted. "What if I can't do this? What if I get in that room and realize I made a mistake?" "Then we'll figure something else out. But I don't think you will." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I've watched you face down reporters and board members and your ex-business partner. You're terrified, yeah. But you're also the strongest person I've ever met. And that doesn't just disappear because you made a hard choice. She reached across the table and took his hand. I don't feel strong. You don't have to. You just have to show up. The weekend passed in a strange, suspended bubble. Serafina worked from her home office, fielding calls and emails and preparing for Monday's confrontation. Nolan and Lily explored the property, finding a tree swing in the backyard and a vegetable garden that had gone wild from neglect. They picked tomatoes and brought them inside, and Serafina looked at them like they'd handed her something impossibly precious. I forgot I even planted these, she said quietly. When? 2 years ago. I thought maybe if I had a garden, I'd be forced to come home more often, take care of something that wasn't work. She laughed, bitter and sad. Obviously, that didn't work. They grew anyway, Lily pointed out. Even when you weren't here. Serafina knelt down to Lily's eye level. You're right, they did. Maybe that means they're strong. Maybe it does. That night, after Lily was asleep, Nolan and Serafina sat in the garden under string lights that cast everything in warm amber. The city was a distant glow below them, close enough to see but far enough to feel separate from. Can I ask you something? Serafina said. Always. Do you think I'm running away? Nolan considered the question carefully. From what? From responsibility. From the hard work of staying and fixing things. From the empire I built. No. I think you're running toward something. That's different. Toward what? A life that doesn't kill you. She was quiet for a long time, staring up at the stars barely visible through the light pollution. My grandmother used to tell me that success wasn't about how much you accumulated. It was about what you were willing to let go of when it stopped serving you. Smart woman. She was. I wish I'd listened to her sooner. You're listening now. Am I? Or am I just scared? Can it be both? Serafina turned to look at him, and in the dim light she looked younger than her years. Vulnerable in a way she rarely allowed herself to be. What happens if this doesn't work? If we can't build something real out of what's left? Then at least we tried. That's more than most people can say. Is it enough? I don't know. But it's all we've got. She kissed him then, slow and deliberate, and he tasted salt and fear and desperate hope all mixed together. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. I'm glad you're here. Me too. They sat in the garden until the night turned cold, holding each other like the world beyond the property line didn't exist. Monday morning arrived with all the subtlety of a hammer. Serafina was up before dawn, dressed in a suit that looked like armor, her hair pulled back severe and controlled. She looked every inch the CEO she'd been a week ago, except for the shadows under her eyes and the way her hands shook slightly when she thought no one was watching. Nolan made coffee while she reviewed her notes one last time. You've got this, he said, handing her a mug. Do I? Yes. How do you know? Because you wouldn't have made it this far if you didn't. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. That's not actually how the world works. Maybe not, but it's how you work. Lily appeared in the doorway, already dressed, her expression serious. Are you going to fight today? Serafina knelt down, smoothing Lily's hair. Kind of, but with words, not fists. Will you win? I don't know, sweetheart, but I'm going to try. Then you'll win, because you're brave. Serafina pulled Lily into a hug, holding on longer than necessary, and Nolan saw her blink back tears she couldn't afford to show. The car arrived at 8. Caroline was already inside, tablet in hand, running through the agenda one more time. The board members are already there. Marcus arrived an hour early, probably to set the tone. Rebecca's holding the fort, but she looks stressed. She should be. This is going to get ugly. Are you ready? No, but I'm going anyway. They drove in tense silence, the city waking up around them, oblivious to the battle about to take place in a conference room downtown. Nolan and Lily stayed in the car when they arrived at Vailtech headquarters. Serafina had offered to arrange for them to wait somewhere comfortable, but Nolan refused. He wanted to be close, even if he couldn't be in the room with her. Wish me luck, Serafina said, her hand on the door handle. You don't need luck. You need conviction, and you've got that. She nodded, took a deep breath, and stepped out of the car. Nolan watched her walk into the building, her spine straight, her stride confident, every inch of her body language screaming that she was still the woman who'd built this empire, even if she no longer wanted to run it. "Dad?" Lily's small voice broke through his thoughts. "Yeah, baby? Is Miss Sarah going to be okay?" Nolan pulled his daughter close, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "I hope so. I really hope so." The meeting lasted 4 hours. Nolan knew because he watched the time tick by on his phone, each minute feeling like an hour. Caroline sent periodic updates, terse, professional, revealing nothing about how things were actually going. Lily got restless after the first hour, so they walked to a nearby park. Nolan pushed her on the swings and helped her across the monkey bars and tried not to think about what was happening in that conference room. His phone buzzed at 12:30. "It's done. Coming down." That was all. No context, no indication of outcome, just those 4 words. They hurried back to the building, arriving just as Serafina emerged through the main entrance. She looked exhausted, her earlier armor showing visible cracks, but her expression was unreadable. She climbed into the car without speaking, and the driver pulled away immediately. "Well?" Nolan asked carefully. Serafina stared out the window for a long moment before answering. "They couldn't reverse it. The transition was too clean, too legally airtight. Rebecca's appointment stands. That's good. They removed me from the board." "What?" "Marcus got his majority, 5 votes to 4. They cited my impulsive decision-making as evidence of compromised judgment. I'm out. Completely." Nolan felt rage flare hot in his chest. "That's within their rights, technically." She finally turned to look at him, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "It's over. I'm not just stepping away from the CEO role. I'm cut out entirely. No advisory position, no board seat. They're even reviewing my equity stake, though they'll probably let me keep that. Probably." "Can you fight it?" "I could. I'd probably win. But it would take years and cost millions and destroy whatever's left of the company in the process. And Her voice broke. "I'm so tired of fighting, Nolan. I'm so tired of being at war." Lily climbed across the seat and into Serafina's lap, wrapping her arms around her neck. "It's okay to be sad," she said seriously. "Crying helps." Serafina let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and finally let the tears come. She cried quietly, her face pressed into Lily's hair, while Nolan held them both and tried to ignore the feeling that they were watching something irreplaceable shatter into pieces too small to ever put back together. When she finally pulled herself together, Serafina's makeup was ruined and her eyes were red, but something in her expression had shifted. Some final weight released. "Take me home," she told the driver. "Not the apartment, the house." And as they drove back toward the hills, toward the craftsman house, with the wild garden and the memories of a grandmother who believed in letting go, Nolan realized that home wasn't where Serafina had built her empire. It was where she'd finally allowed herself to fall apart. The weeks that followed were nothing like Nolan expected. He'd imagined Serafina would spiral, that losing the company she'd built would break something fundamental inside her. He'd braced himself for anger, for regret, for the moment when she'd look at him and Lily and realize what she'd given up wasn't worth what she'd gained. But that moment never came. Instead, she woke up the morning after the board meeting, walked into the kitchen where Nolan was making breakfast and said, "I want to learn how to cook." He'd stared at her, spatula in hand, trying to parse the request. "You want to what?" "Cook. Real food. Not takeout or catered meals or whatever Caroline orders for working dinners. I want to know how to make something with my own hands that doesn't involve a computer or a quarterly report." "Okay, we can do that. And I want to teach Lily something. Maybe music. I played piano when I was younger, before everything got so—" She gestured vaguely, encompassing an entire lifetime of ambition and sacrifice. "Complicated." Lily had appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "I want to learn piano." Serafina's smile had been tentative but real. "Then we'll learn together." That was how it started. Small things, deliberate things. The kind of ordinary life decisions that most people made without thinking, but that Serafina approached like she was learning a foreign language. She was terrible at cooking. Burned rice, oversalted pasta, once somehow managed to set off the smoke alarm making scrambled eggs. But she kept trying, and Nolan stood beside her, teaching her the basics his own mother had taught him years ago. Lily helped, standing on a stool and stirring things with intense concentration, and gradually the kitchen stopped feeling like foreign territory and started feeling like home. The piano lessons were harder. Serafina's hands remembered more than her mind did, muscle memory kicking in from childhood, but the joy was gone. She played mechanically at first, hitting the right notes without any feeling behind them. Lily didn't care. She banged on the keys with abandon, making up songs that had no structure but infinite enthusiasm. And slowly, watching her, Serafina started to remember what playing for pleasure felt like instead of playing for perfection. The media circus continued for a while. Reporters still called, though less frequently. The business news moved on to other scandals, other stories. Vailtech's stock stabilized under Rebecca's leadership, and the dire predictions of collapse never materialized. Marcus Chen got his board seat and his influence, but he didn't get the total victory he'd wanted, and after a few weeks, even he seemed to lose interest in destroying Serafina now that she was no longer in his way. But the quiet that settled over them wasn't peaceful. Not at first. Serafina struggled with it, with the absence of constant pressure, constant performance, constant achievement. She'd check her phone compulsively, searching for emails that no longer came. She'd wake up in the middle of the night and pace the house, her mind still racing through problems that were no longer hers to solve. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted one night, standing in the living room at 2 a.m. while Nolan watched from the couch where he'd found her. "Do what?" "Nothing. I don't know how to do nothing. My entire life has been about building, achieving, proving something. And now," she spread her hands helplessly, "now I'm just here. And I don't know who I am if I'm not working." Nolan stood and crossed to her, taking her restless hands in his. "Then figure it out. You've got time now. What if there's nothing underneath? What if I stripped away the CEO and the company and the success, and there's just emptiness?" "There's not." "How do you know?" "Because I've seen you with Lily. I've seen you in the garden. I've seen you trying to make dinner even though you're terrible at it. That's not emptiness. That's someone learning how to be human again." She'd laughed, wet and broken. "That's a low bar." "Maybe, but it's the right one." The turning point came 6 weeks after the board meeting, on a Tuesday afternoon that felt like any other Tuesday, until it suddenly wasn't. Nolan was at work, trying to focus on infrastructure reports, and failing because half his mind was always on Serafina now, wondering if today would be the day she finally broke. His phone rang, and he saw Lily's school on the caller ID. His heart stopped. "Mr. Reed, this is Principal Morrison. Everything's fine, but we need you to come pick up Lily. There's been an incident." "What kind of incident?" "Nothing serious, but it's better if we discuss it in person." He left immediately, driving too fast, his mind conjuring every possible disaster. When he arrived, he found Lily sitting in the office, looking small and defiant, her arms crossed, her face set in that stubborn expression she got when she knew she'd done something wrong but wasn't sorry about it. Principal Morrison was a kind woman in her 50s who'd always been good to Lily. She gestured for Nolan to sit. "Lily got into a fight today." "A fight? Lily doesn't fight." "Usually no, but today another student made some comments about Miss Vale. Things he'd heard his parents saying probably, about her being unstable, making poor decisions, ruining her company. And Lily," she glanced at his daughter with something that looked like respect. "Lily punched him." Nolan blinked. "She what?" "In the nose. No real damage, but it was enough to warrant a conversation." He looked at Lily, who met his gaze steadily, unapologetic. "Lily, you can't hit people. He said mean things about Miss Sarah." "I know, but..." "He said she was crazy. He said she threw away her whole life for nothing. He said you were probably just using her for money, and when you got what you wanted, you'd leave." Her voice cracked on the last word. "And I told him to take it back, but he wouldn't, so I made him." Nolan felt something crack open in his chest. His 7-year-old daughter, fierce and loyal and absolutely certain that defending Serafina was worth getting in trouble for. He looked at Principal Morrison. "What happens now?" "Normally, we'd have a suspension, but given the circumstances and Lily's record, I'm willing to accept a detention and a written apology to the other student." "That's fair. However," she fixed Lily with a serious look. "Violence is never the answer, Lily. No matter how much someone hurts your feelings or the feelings of people you love. Do you understand?" Lily nodded, but she didn't look convinced. They left the office, and Nolan drove in silence for a few minutes before pulling over into a parking lot. "Lily, look at me." She turned, and her eyes were bright with tears she was trying hard not to shed. "I'm not mad at you," he said carefully. "I'm proud of you for wanting to defend Serafina. But Principal Morrison is right. Hitting people isn't okay, even when they say terrible things." "But he was lying." "Maybe. But here's the thing. People are going to talk. They're going to say things about all of us, about the choices we've made. And we can't punch everyone who has an opinion we don't like. Then what do? We prove them wrong by living our lives, by being happy, by showing them that what we have is real and worth protecting, even if they don't understand it." Lily thought about this for a moment. "Is Miss Sarah happy?" The question hit harder than it should have. "I think she's trying to be," Nolan said honestly. "It's hard for her. She gave up a lot to be with us." "Does she regret it?" "I don't know. You'd have to ask her." "Can we go home? I want to see her." Home. Not his apartment, which they'd barely spent time in lately. Home meant the house in the hills, where Serafina was probably working in the garden, or struggling through another piano lesson, or staring out the window wondering if she'd made a catastrophic mistake. "Yeah, we can go home." When they arrived, Serafina was in the garden, her hands covered in dirt, her hair tied back with a bandana, looking nothing like the CEO she'd been, and everything like the person she was trying to become. She looked up when she heard the car, her expression shifting from concentration to concern when she saw them arrive early. "What happened?" Lily ran to her, throwing her arms around Serafina's waist, despite the dirt. "I got in trouble at school." "What? Why?" "Because I punched Dylan Martinez for saying mean things about you." Serafina's eyes went wide. She looked at Nolan, who shrugged helplessly, then back at Lily. "You punched someone for me?" "He deserved it." "Lily..." Serafina knelt down, taking Lily's shoulders gently. "You can't hit people, even if they say things that aren't true." "That's what Dad said. But what else was I supposed to do? Just let him lie?" "Yes, because people who need to tear others down to feel good about themselves aren't worth your energy. And because..." Her voice softened. "Because I'm not worth getting in trouble over." "Yes, you are." Serafina's composure cracked. She pulled Lily into a tight hug, her eyes squeezing shut, and Nolan saw her mouth move in words she couldn't quite say out loud. When she finally let go, she looked at Lily seriously. "Do you know what the bravest thing you could do is?" "What?" "Be happy. Live your life. Don't let what other people think change who you are or what you care about. That's real strength. Not punching, just existing, loudly and honestly, even when people judge you for it." Lily considered this. "Is that what you're doing?" "I'm trying to." "Is it working?" Serafina glanced at Nolan, her expression vulnerable and uncertain and achingly honest. "I don't know yet. Ask me in a year." Recit. The decision to move came gradually, then all at once. Nolan's apartment lease was up for renewal, and the question of whether to renew it or let it go felt heavier than it should have. They'd been living at Serafina's house for nearly 2 months, and going back to the cramped 2-bedroom felt wrong, in a way he couldn't quite articulate. "Stay here," Serafina said one evening, as casual as if she was offering him coffee instead of asking him to upend his life. "You and Lily, make this place home." "Serafina, I know it's fast, I know it's probably reckless, but I don't want you to leave. I wake up and hear Lily playing piano, or I come downstairs and you're making breakfast, and the house feels alive in a way it never has before, so stay, please." Nolan had looked around the house, at the space they'd gradually filled with their presence, and realized he didn't want to leave either. "Okay? Okay? Yeah, okay." She'd kissed him then, relieved and terrified in equal measure, and they'd made plans to move his and Lily's things over the following weekend. Crawford Industries wasn't happy about Nolan's decision to go remote, but they agreed to let him work from home 3 days a week as long as he maintained his project deadlines. It wasn't perfect, but it was workable. And it gave him more time with Lily, more time to make sure Serafina was actually eating lunch instead of skipping meals, more time to build the life they were all pretending to be certain about. Serafina started consulting part-time for small tech startups that needed strategic guidance but couldn't afford the big firms. She worked on her own terms, took projects that interested her instead of ones that paid the most, and slowly rebuilt a relationship with work that didn't consume her entire identity. The money was still there. Her equity stake in Vailtech was worth hundreds of millions, and she'd been smart about investments over the years. They weren't hurting financially. But Serafina was learning, painfully and slowly, that having money and needing to prove something weren't the same thing. I used to think success meant being indispensable, she told Nolan one night, lying in bed with her head on his chest. Like if I stopped working, everything would collapse, and that would prove I mattered. And now? Now I think maybe mattering has nothing to do with how many people need you professionally. Maybe it's just about whether someone knows who you really are and still wants you around. Deep thoughts for midnight. I'm serious. I know. And you're right. She was quiet for a moment. Do you ever regret it? Taking us on? This whole messy situation? Every day. She tensed and he felt her start to pull away, but he held her in place. I regret that it took me so long to risk it. I regret the years I spent hiding. I regret that Lily had to grow up thinking safe was the same as happy. But I don't regret you. I don't regret this. Even though it's complicated, especially because it's complicated, easy isn't worth much. She kissed his shoulder, her breath warm against his skin. I love you, and I'm terrified of losing this. Then don't. Just be here. With us. That's all we need. Lily's 8th birthday fell on a Saturday in October, and Serafina insisted on planning the party herself. She approached it with the same intensity she'd once brought to product launches, researching themes and decorations and activities, until Nolan had to physically remove the laptop from her hands and remind her that 8-year-olds didn't need a strategic plan. I just want it to be perfect, she said, frustrated. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be fun. What if she doesn't like it? She'll love it because you made it. That's how this works. The party was small, just a few kids from school, Maria from the old neighborhood, and Rebecca, who'd stayed in touch with Serafina despite the corporate divorce. They set up in the backyard, hung streamers from the trees, and Serafina made a cake that was lopsided and covered in too much frosting but tasted surprisingly decent. Lily opened presents with the enthusiasm of any 8-year-old, squealing over books and art supplies and a new bike that Nolan and Serafina had picked out together. But the gift that made her cry, actually cry, happy tears streaming down her face, was from Serafina alone. A framed photograph. 3 of them, taken a few weeks earlier in the garden. Nolan had his arm around Serafina. Lily was between them, and they were all laughing at something just outside the frame. They looked like a family. So we don't forget, Serafina said quietly, that this is real. Lily had thrown herself at Serafina, holding on tight, and Nolan watched them and felt something inside him finally, completely settle. Later, after the kids had gone home and Lily was sugar-crashed in front of a movie, Rebecca pulled Serafina aside. You look happy. I'm getting there. The company's doing well, by the way. In case you were wondering, stock's up 12% from where it was when you left. New product launch next quarter is generating serious buzz. That's because you're good at your job. Maybe. Or maybe because I'm not trying to prove something impossible. Rebecca paused. Marcus tried to push through a hostile acquisition last week. Board shot him down unanimously. Turns out nobody actually likes him. They were just afraid of you. Serafina laughed, surprised and genuine. Good for you. You could come back, not as CEO, but we'd find a role. Something that uses your skills without consuming your life. I know, but I don't think I want to. Why not? Serafina looked through the window at Nolan and Lily, at the life she'd built in the ruins of her empire. Because I finally figured out what I actually want, and it's not in a boardroom. Rebecca smiled. Then I'm happy for you, genuinely. After she left, Nolan found Serafina standing in the garden, watching the sun set over the city below. You okay? Yeah, just thinking. About? About how a year ago, I would have killed to have Rebecca's job, and now I can't imagine wanting it back. Regrets? No, just perspective. Everything I thought mattered so much, all the battles I fought, the sacrifices I made, it all feels small now. Not unimportant, but not worth what I paid for it. Nolan wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. You think you paid too much? I think I almost missed out on this. On you, on Lily, on a life that actually feels like living instead of just surviving. And if I'd kept going, if I'd stayed on that path, I would have woken up at 60, rich and successful and completely alone, and realized I'd won a game that didn't matter. But you didn't. No, I didn't, because some widower hired a fake girlfriend and accidentally gave me permission to be honest for the first time in my adult life. Best $800 I ever spent. She turned in his arms, laughing and crying at the same time. You paid $800? Plus tip. You're an idiot. Yeah, but I'm your idiot. Yeah, she agreed softly. You are. Well, the holidays came, and with them, decisions about the future. Serafina's grandmother's house was too far from Lily's school for the daily commute, and Nolan's job, even partially remote, required him to be closer to the city. They talked about moving, about finding something in between, about what home actually meant when none of them had really had one in years. I want to sell this place, Serafina said one evening, the words coming out like she'd been holding them in for weeks. What? Why? Because it's a memory. A beautiful memory of my grandmother and who I used to be. But we can't build a future in a memory. We need something that's ours, all three of us. Where? I don't know. Somewhere quieter than the city, but not as isolated as here. Somewhere Lily can have friends over without you having to drive an hour. Somewhere we can build something new instead of trying to fit ourselves into spaces designed for different lives. They found it 3 weeks later. A house in a neighborhood halfway between everywhere they needed to be, close enough to Lily's school, close enough to Nolan's office for the days he went in, close enough to the city, but far enough that they could breathe. It was smaller than Serafina's house in the hills, older, with a yard that needed work and rooms that needed paint. It wasn't impressive. It wasn't grand. It was just home. This is it, Lily announced the moment they walked in, running from room to room with unchecked enthusiasm. This is our house. Serafina looked at Nolan, and he saw hope and fear warring in her expression. You sure about this? No, but I'm doing it anyway. That seems to be our thing. Making terrible decisions, making brave ones. They bought the house in January, moved in February, spent March slowly making it theirs, painting walls and planting a garden and arguing about furniture in the good-natured way that people who are building a life together argue. Serafina's name stayed out of the news. Vailtech continued without her, thriving in ways that proved she'd been right to let go. Marcus Chen eventually resigned from the board after a scandal involving insider trading, and Serafina felt nothing when she heard about it except mild satisfaction that karma occasionally worked. Nolan's job stabilized into something sustainable. He still worked too much sometimes, still carried the weight of being the primary breadwinner, but Serafina's presence took the edge off the fear that used to drive him. He had backup now, partnership, someone who understood that providing wasn't the same as proving. Lily thrived, made friends, brought home stories from school, asked questions about Claire sometimes, and Nolan answered them honestly, and Serafina listened without jealousy or discomfort, understanding that love didn't erase the past, it just made room for the present. And slowly, day by day, meal by meal, fight by fight, they became something that looked less like an arrangement and more like a family. The moment Nolan proposed wasn't planned or grand. They were in the kitchen on a random Tuesday night making dinner together while Lily did homework at the table. Serafina was chopping vegetables badly, still hadn't quite mastered the knife skills despite months of practice. He was at the stove, stirring pasta sauce, and the radio was playing something old and familiar. I've been thinking, he said, not looking at her. About? About how we tell people what this is, what we are. We're together. That's what we tell them. Yeah, but he set down the spoon and turned to face her. I want more than that. I want permanent. I want legal. I want to stand in front of people and say, this is my wife, this is my family, this is the life I chose. Serafina's knife slipped, nearly catching her finger. She set it down carefully. Are you asking you to marry me? Yeah, I am. He wiped his hands on a towel, suddenly nervous in a way he hadn't expected. I don't have a ring. I didn't plan this. But I love you. And I want Lily to have your last name as much as mine. And I want to stop pretending we're just figuring things out and start admitting we already did. Serafina stared at him, her eyes wide and bright. Say something, he said. Yes. Yes? Yes? Obviously, yes. You think I went through all this just to be your girlfriend forever? He kissed her then, hard and relieved, and Lily looked up from her homework. Are you getting married? Yeah, Nolan said, still holding Serafina close. We are. Finally. I've been waiting forever. Serafina laughed, pulling Lily into the hug, and they stood there in the kitchen with dinner half made and the radio still playing, holding each other like they'd finally found the thing worth holding on to. They got married in June, in the backyard of their new house, with the garden they'd planted together blooming around them. It was small. Just a handful of people who mattered. Maria, Rebecca, a few colleagues from Nolan's work, Lily's favorite teacher, and some friends from the neighborhood they were still getting to know. No investors, no board members, no media, just people who loved them and were genuinely happy they'd found each other. Lily was the flower girl, serious and focused, taking her job with the kind of intensity that made everyone smile. Serafina wore a simple dress that cost a fraction of what her gala gowns used to cost, but looked infinitely better because she was actually happy wearing it. Nolan wore the same suit he'd worn to that first gala, the one where this whole mess had started, because it felt right to bring that moment full circle. They wrote their own vows. Nolan's were simple, honest, exactly what people who knew him would expect. He talked about being afraid to risk anything after Claire died, about building walls to protect himself and Lily, about how Serafina had somehow slipped through those walls by accident and made him remember that survival wasn't the same as living. Serafina's were harder, more raw, the kind of vulnerability that still didn't come easily to her even after everything. I spent most of my life believing my value came from what I could achieve, she said, her voice steady, but her hands shaking slightly. From how much I could build, how many people I could impress, how high I could climb. And I was good at it, really good. But I was also empty. And I didn't even realize it until I met you. She looked at Nolan, then at Lily, then back. You didn't fall in love with my empire. You fell in love with the person I was trying so hard not to be. Scared, uncertain, desperate for something real. And you made me brave enough to let go of everything I thought defined me and find out who I actually was underneath. That's a gift I can never repay. But I can spend the rest of my life trying. She turned to Lily, kneeling down so they were eye level. And you, sweetheart, you taught me that family isn't something you're born into. It's something you choose and build and fight for every single day. Thank you for choosing me. For being brave enough to love someone new even though you'd already lost someone you loved. That takes more courage than anything I've ever done. Lily hugged her, fierce and tight, and there wasn't a dry eye in the garden. The ceremony was short. The reception was simple. Food from a local restaurant, music from a playlist they'd made together, dancing on the grass while the sun set, and neighbors probably wondered what the noise was about. At one point, Nolan found Serafina standing at the edge of the garden, looking back at the small gathering with an expression he'd learned to recognize as her trying not to cry. You okay? A year ago, I thought I had everything, and I was miserable. Now I have almost nothing compared to what I used to have, and I've never been happier. That's strange. That's perspective. Is it? Yeah. Turns out the things that actually matter don't cost anything. They just require you to be brave enough to want them. She leaned into him, and they stood there watching their tiny wedding reception continue without them for a moment. Do you think we'll make it? She asked quietly. I don't know, but I think we'll try, and that's more than most people can say. Very romantic. I'm not a romantic guy. No. You're a realistic guy who loves me anyway. That's better. The months after the wedding settled into something that resembled normal life, which was both wonderful and occasionally suffocating. Serafina struggled with the ordinariness of it sometimes, with the grocery shopping and parent-teacher conferences and arguing about whose turn it was to clean the bathroom. She'd lived at such a high intensity for so long that the gentle rhythm of domestic life felt wrong, like she'd forgotten how to function without crisis. I'm bored, she admitted one evening, the words clearly difficult for her to say. Okay, what do you want to do about it? I don't know, that's the problem. I don't know how to want things just for me anymore. I don't know what I like when it's not connected to work or proving something. Then experiment, try things, fail at them, figure it out. She tried pottery, hated it, tried volunteering at Lily's school library, loved it. Started teaching a weekend class on entrepreneurship at the local community college. Found it challenging and rewarding in ways that had nothing to do with building an empire. Nolan struggled too, in different ways. with accepting that Serafina didn't need him to save her, that she was capable of saving herself but chose to stay anyway, with the fear that someday she'd wake up and realize she'd made a mistake, that she'd traded too much for too little. "You think too much," she told him one night when he voiced these fears. "Someone has to." "No, they don't. You can just be. Just exist here with us without constantly waiting for it to fall apart." "I don't know how to do that." "Then learn." "I'm learning how to be ordinary. You can learn how to be present." They went to therapy, individual and couples, sat in uncomfortable chairs and talked about grief and identity and fear and all the messy human things that didn't have easy answers. It helped. Not in the dramatic way movies portrayed, but in the slow, steady way that actual healing happened. Lily adapted faster than either of them, the way children do. She called Serafina Mom for the first time in September, casual and easy, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Serafina had cried for an hour afterward, overwhelmed by the trust that single word represented. The first year of their marriage wasn't perfect. They fought sometimes. About money, about parenting decisions, about whose family traditions to adopt and whose to leave behind. But they fought fair, and they fought together, and they always came back to the same truth. This was hard, but it was worth it. 2 years after the gala that started everything, Nolan came home to find Serafina in the garden, her laptop open on the picnic table, her expression more animated than he'd seen in weeks. "What's going on?" "I got a call today from a venture capital firm. They want me to join them as a partner." His stomach dropped. "You're leaving?" "What?" "No, listen, they want me to help evaluate early-stage tech companies, provide mentorship, help founders avoid the mistakes I made. It's part-time, flexible, and it would let me stay involved in the industry without running anything or being responsible for anyone's success but my own." "And you want to do it?" She closed the laptop, giving him her full attention. "I think I do. Not because I need to prove anything, not because I miss the power, but because I actually know things that could help people, and I'd like to use that knowledge for something other than my own ego." "Then you should do it." "You're sure?" "It would mean some travel, some late nights, some time away from here." "Serafina, you don't need my permission to have a career. You need balance. And if this gives you that, then it's good for all of us." She smiled, relieved and grateful. "How did I get so lucky?" "You didn't. You made a choice. Big difference." She took the position, threw herself into it with a passion that was focused instead of consuming. She mentored young founders, helped women in tech navigate boardrooms that didn't want them there, invested in companies that were trying to build something meaningful instead of just profitable. And she came home every night to a house that was messy and loud and full of the kind of chaos that used to terrify her, but now felt like proof that she was living instead of just performing. Nolan got a promotion at work, finally, recognition for the years he'd put in and the stability he'd maintained. The extra money helped, not in ways that changed their life dramatically, but in ways that gave them breathing room. They could save for Lily's college. They could take vacations. They could stop making every financial decision feel like potential catastrophe. Lily turned 10 and asked for piano lessons from a real teacher, which they took as both a compliment and a gentle acknowledgement that Serafina had taught her as much as she could. She joined the school orchestra, made friends who came over too often and stayed too late, and generally became the kind of well-adjusted kid that neither Nolan nor Serafina had been at her age. "We're doing okay," Nolan said one night, lying in bed with Serafina's head on his chest, Lily asleep down the hall, the house quiet around them. "Yeah, we are." "You ever regret it? Walking away?" She was quiet for a moment, thinking about it honestly instead of just giving the answer he wanted to hear. "Sometimes I miss the rush, the feeling of closing a deal or launching a product or knowing I'd built something from nothing. But then I come home, and you're making dinner badly, and Lily's practicing piano badly, and I'm gardening badly, and I realize this is what I wanted all along. I just didn't know how to want it." "What changed?" "You asked me to be real, to stop performing, to let you see who I actually was underneath all the armor. And it was the scariest thing anyone had ever asked me, but also the most generous because you were asking me to be seen. Not for what I could do, but for who I was. And once I started, I couldn't stop." Nolan pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "I'm glad you didn't." "Me too. Even when it's hard, even when I'm screwing up dinner or fighting with you about whose turn it is to do laundry or trying to explain to a 10-year-old why she can't have social media yet, it's all worth it because it's real. They fell asleep like that, tangled together, imperfect and honest, and exactly where they needed to be. Years passed the way they do, in moments that felt both significant and ordinary. Lily graduated middle school, started high school, brought home her first boyfriend, who Nolan terrified and Serafina charmed. She talked about college, about wanting to study music or maybe engineering, about all the possibilities stretching out ahead of her. Nolan's hair went more gray, his back hurt more often. He complained about it less. Serafina found silver in her own hair and decided to stop dyeing it, letting the natural color come through because she was done pretending to be anything other than exactly who she was. They bought a cabin upstate. Nothing fancy, just a place to escape on weekends when the city got too loud. They taught Lily to fish, badly. They sat on the porch in the evenings and watched the sun set over the lake and talked about everything and nothing. Vailtech sold to a larger company for an undisclosed sum. Serafina got a payout that was substantial, but not empire-making. She donated most of it to scholarship funds for women in tech, kept enough to secure their financial future, and didn't look back. Marcus Chen's name appeared in the news occasionally, always in connection with some new drama, some new venture that promised to change everything and usually changed nothing. Serafina stopped reading the articles after a while. He didn't matter to her anymore. He was part of a life she'd lived but no longer inhabited. Rebecca stayed in touch, visited occasionally, brought stories from the corporate world that Serafina listened to with interest but no longing. They'd become genuine friends. The kind of friendship that wasn't based on what they could do for each other, but on who they actually were. The house filled up with life, with art projects and piano music and arguments about dinner and lazy Sunday mornings and all the unremarkable moments that make up a remarkable life. And through it all, Nolan and Serafina learned the most important lesson neither of them had known they needed. That building an empire was impressive, but building a home took real courage. That success was easy to measure in dollars and headlines, but meaning was harder, messier, and infinitely more valuable. They learned that love wasn't about finding someone who completed you, because people aren't puzzles with missing pieces. Love was about finding someone brave enough to be broken in front of you and trusting you to be broken in front of them. They learned that family wasn't something you were born into or something you built through perfect decisions. It was something you chose every single day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. And they learned that the only empire worth building was the one made of ordinary moments, shared struggles, and the kind of honest connection that didn't need to prove anything to anyone because it was enough just to exist. On their 5th wedding anniversary, they sat in the backyard of the house they'd made into a home, watching Lily practice piano through the open window, and Serafina said the truest thing she'd ever said. "This is enough." "Yeah," Nolan agreed, taking her hand. "It is." And it was. Not perfect, not impressive, not the kind of life that made headlines or inspired envy or proved anything to anyone who wasn't living it. Just enough, just real, just theirs. And in the end, that was more than either of them had ever thought they'd find.